Hi, good morning and welcome to the Town of Manalapan Town Commission meeting, May 26, 2020 at 10 a.m.
Everyone needs to mute their phones. We're getting a lot of reverb. Okay, thank you very much. So here's our first experience with a virtual meeting. Lisa will take a roll call to make sure, to show that everyone is here. And Mayor, you can start the meeting. How's that, okay?
Sounds good.
All right, roll call. Keith Waters, Mayor.
Present.
Simone Benuti.
Here.
Jack Doyle.
Present.
Hank Seaman.
Here.
Stuart Satter.
Present.
Richard Granara.
Present.
Chauncey Johnstone.
Here.
Keith Davis.
I'm present.
Thank you. Linda Stump, Carmen Maddox are present in the chambers.
All right, everyone. Well, we are called to order then the Town Commission meeting for Tuesday, May the 26th, 2020. This is a rather unusual process that we're having to go through based on the Governor's Executive Order 20-69, which for the first time in the history of our town, we're having an electronic Town Commission meeting. So this is a precedent setting because technology is always more interesting than it's supposed to be. I'll ask for everyone, please be patient with this process. If for whatever reason, if we have any issues, if anyone blanks out or anything happens, just hold tight, and we will either fix or reset or whatever needs to happen, just in case, because you never know. But in order of process, we'll go through the normal agenda, starting with the joining me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
And
to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And then before we begin, just very quickly, just a quick word to Susan and Stuart Satter. Our thoughts and prayers are with you, Stuart, and certainly with Susan, who lost her father this weekend. So we're amazed that you're even with us today, but we certainly are thinking about you and certainly thinking about Susan and the family as we start this process today.
Thank you,
First item, we have the reorganization, and Lisa, if you will lead us off with the results from the 2020 election.
Hey, thank you. The results of the March 2020 municipal election, there were 3 elected by virtue of no opposition: Simone Benuti, Chauncey Johnstone, and Richard Granara. What I'd like to do is I'm going to swear in. I will read the oath, and at the end, then I will ask each of you to state I do. I do solemnly swear or affirm that I will support and protect and defend the Constitution and government of the United States and of the state of Florida against all enemies, domestic or foreign, and that I will bear true faith, loyalty, and allegiance to the same, and that I am entitled to hold office under the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the state of Florida, and that I will faithfully perform all the duties of the office of Town Commissioner of the Town of Manalapan, upon which I'm about to enter.
I do.
I do.
Johnstone
I do.
and Richard Granara.
I do.
Thank you. You have been duly sworn in.
Well, welcome and welcome back, everyone. Thank you so much for your service to the community, for continuing to help us and help the community with all of these decisions that we make. It's very much appreciated. We also have on item number 3, then, we have appointments to the commissions, the various boards and commissions that we have in town. In the interest of time, you've been provided all the information. Linda, tell me whether this needs to be read into the record since we're audio.
Yes, it should be, Mayor.
Okay, Lisa, or well, actually, Linda, why don't you? Yeah, Linda, if you can just go through and let's just read through the architectural zoning and building board of adjustments and read those audibly into the record.
Absolutely. For the Architectural Commission, seat 1, we're recommending to appoint Sharon Kirkland. Seat 2, Frank Minella, to name him the chair of ARCOM. Kristen Rosen, to appoint her to seat 3. Eileen Hunt, to be named as the vice chair for seat 4. Karen Quigley, there's no change. She'll just run again. This should be on this year. And Sam Savetsky, appoint him to the first alternate. There will still be 1 vacant seat on ARCOM. The Zoning Commission, seat 1, William Geck, your recommendation is to reappoint. Aaron Charney, there's no change. Robert Rosen, appoint him to seat 3. Holly Matson, no change. Michael Canner, reappoint him to seat 5. There are still 2 vacant seats on zoning. The Building Board of Adjustment and Appeals, Scott, reappoint him. Gregory Bonner, no change for that. Thomas Biggs, reappoint him. No change. And Stuart LaPierre, reappoint him. And that would be the recommendation, and we have a resolution for.
Okay, so we need to, with those, we need to get a motion for those appointments.
I'll make the motion.
I'll
So we have a
second it.
motion. I need a second.
Seconded.
The second was by whom?
Seconded.
I have Cynthia Benuti as
Commissioners, this is Attorney Davis. If I could get your cooperation when you are, please introduce yourselves verbally so we know who's making motions and seconding. Since this is not a video proceeding, it's difficult sometimes to recognize voices, especially since we haven't seen or heard from each other in months.
Simone Benuti makes the motion.
Was Chauncey Johnstone seconding?
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, aye.
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 All opposed, like sign. Okay, very good. Thank you, folks. We also have then the resolution 2-2020, which is the resolution for the appointment of vice mayor and mayor pro tem. We're moving forward with, again, with Commissioner Benuti as vice mayor and Commissioner Doyle as mayor pro tem. I'd like to get a motion on that. Please, and again, identify yourself.
Stuart Satter, I make a motion.
Richard
Do I have a
Granara,
second?
the second. Richard Granara,
Okay,
second.
All in favor, aye.
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 All opposed, like sign. All right, thanks, folks. And again, thank you to everyone on the boards that are either with us or not. We appreciate. There's a lot that goes into ARCOM and zoning and as we need them, the Board of Adjustments and Appeals. We appreciate that help from those who volunteer to be part of that process. We also have an orientation. Council, you have an orientation?
Good morning, Mayor.
What was
This is
that part?
Attorney Davis. I assume you'd like me to keep this as brief as possible.
As always.
Thank you. Welcome back to everybody. And Commissioner Johnstone, I don't think a lot has changed since you served last, but just to very briefly touch on the high points. Sunshine Law remains in effect, but as evidenced by our meeting today, during this current state of emergency, has been slightly modified. So Sunshine Law still requires that any discussions about matters coming before the commission must take place in a quote unquote public meeting. What is different is that under the current state of emergency, the Sunshine Law requirements for a quorum being physically present and the meeting occurring in a particular location have been suspended, and we are allowed to use communications media technology to conduct our meetings as we're doing this morning, which means none of us have to be in any particular place or physically present to constitute a quorum. We can all be in our own locations and meet like this, so long as the public is still able to participate, and by virtue of being able to call in and listen, and also be able to provide public comments. And you may have noticed on our agenda, we have directions for people to have submitted public comments in advance of this meeting so that the town clerk could have those and be able to read them into the record at the appropriate time. But so even though we are allowed to meet the way we're meeting, Sunshine Law still does not allow you to discuss matters that will be coming before you privately amongst yourselves. So that is still in force and effect, even though we can meet the way we meet. Public record law pretty much is as it has been. Anything made or received in furtherance of town business is generally a public record. As before, this includes emails, text messages, and certainly can include social media posts, which really has become a very important thing, especially during this state of emergency, where a lot of jurisdictions are actually using Facebook as a means to conduct their meetings. But the thing for you to keep in mind, again, is that any of those things, if they're about town business, they generally will be considered a public record, even though there are exceptions, which I don't need to go through the litany of exceptions. But the other important thing that I always want to remind you about is that, especially in terms of email, if there is a need to generate an email regarding town business, please use your town issued email address, because when you do that, the town clerk remains the custodian of those records. You don't have to worry about preserving them in the event we get a public records request for email documents. We have them all at town hall, and you don't have to be relegated to the role of records custodian. If you use a personal email to do that, then you would be responsible for maintaining that document properly. In the event that a private email address was used, my advice would be to forward that email to your town email, thereby getting it into the town clerks and the town system for them to preserve it properly. Same idea with text messages. I really discourage the use of text messaging for anything other than what I consider transient messages. You know, for example, "Hi, Mayor, will I be seeing you at the commission meeting this morning?" Yeah, that kind of a text message is fine. It's not meant to convey knowledge. It's not meant to provide information about town business. It's just a transitory message that would not be considered a public record. So things like that are okay. If you start including substantive items in your text messages, you know, like I have concerns about this agenda item that I think we need to discuss, that starts to get close to crossing a line. Then that text message could be considered a public record. Then we have to worry about preserving that and providing it should there be a records request. My advice would be the same on text messages as it is with emails from your private email account. In the event that you feel like, you know, maybe I sent a text message that was a little bit substantive, that might be considered a public record, take a screenshot of that text message and email it to the town clerk. Then we've got it. And again, you don't have to worry about preserving that text message. And, we all know those tend to be difficult to preserve. The carriers keep them for a short period of time, but quite often records, and I've had this happen where I've had a records request for text messages months and months after the event occurred, and trying to drill them out is extremely difficult. So I will leave it with those little items in terms of sunshine law and public records. The next thing I want to remind the commission about are quasi-judicial proceedings. Generally, when you meet, you're meeting as a legislative body, and decision-making is based on what you believe is in the best interest of the town. It's a very low standard. It's in terms of having to be legally defended. It is very easy to defend. When you sit in a quasi-judicial capacity, those are typically land development or land use requests, and you see certain variance applications. We've had one recently. Sometimes you see special exception, or if you had a site-specific rezoning. Those are all examples of things that could be quasi-judicial. And what that means is that you are acting as a fact finder and applying factual evidence that's presented to you at a public meeting against criteria that is in your code, and you are acting as a quote unquote judge to determine whether the applicant has met its burden to establish all of those criteria. And the difference in a quasi-judicial proceeding than in a legislative capacity is that your job is not to make a decision based on what you think is the best for the town. Your job is to make a decision based on whether you think the applicant has met its burden. And if the applicant has met its burden, whether you think it's good or bad, your role is to grant their request. And likewise, if you feel like the applicant has not met its burden, even if you think it's the best thing ever for the town, your job is to deny the request because they've not met their burden. So that's the big difference between a quasi-judicial proceeding and your legislative role. Those are the big substantive legal points. I just want to remind you of a few ethical considerations that always apply to your service as a commissioner. Voting conflicts. You are required to vote on everything that comes before you unless you have a voting conflict. A voting conflict is defined as any item that would result in a personal financial benefit or loss, or a financial benefit or loss to a family member, spouse, or principal or business associate. That's it. There are no other legally recognized voting conflicts. And in the absence of that special financial benefit or loss, you are required to vote. In the event you have a voting conflict, as you probably recall, you are neither allowed to vote on the matter nor participate in the discussion. You're required to announce the voting conflict, and then there's a form that's filled out and that gets appended to the meeting minutes. So that's the 10,000-foot view on voting conflicts. If you ever feel like you might be stepping into a voting conflict scenario, let's talk about that in advance so we can work through your particular situation and make an informed decision on whether or not there actually would be a legally recognized voting conflict. You're all still required to fill out annual financial disclosures. Those are due no later than July 1st of each calendar year, so that's actually coming up. And it's the same document you filled out every year. Gift law has not changed. Any gift from a vendor or a lobbyist of the town should not be taken. Technically, the law allows an annual aggregate value of $100 from a lobbyist or vendor. But my advice is, rather than try and figure out, how many drinks I bought you in a given year, just say no. Otherwise, any gift valued at $100 or more is allowed. It's just required to be reported on a quarterly gift reporting form, which the town clerk has and will provide you if need be. And as always, the gift law is not meant to capture gifts like birthday gifts, anniversary gifts, holiday gifts. That's not what this is about. So if you ever have a question about accepting a gift, again, let's talk about that and decide if it's whether it's from a lobbyist or a vendor, and if not, whether it's something that has to be reported if you want to accept it. Mandatory ethics training. Commissioner Johnstone, I don't recall if this was on the books when you last served or not, but at this point in time, each of you is required to complete a minimum of 4 hours of ethics training every year. And that ethics training, the Palm Beach County League of Cities provides a number of opportunities throughout the year. And there are other opportunities, I think, through the Florida League of Cities. Some of them are in person, some of them are webinars. But that is required every year. In addition, the town, through the Palm Beach County Commission on Ethics or Code of Ethics, has adopted its own ethics training policy. And the town clerk can remind you of what those requirements are. It's different than the 4 hours every year. It's not that burdensome. And the Palm Beach County Commission on Ethics has a video that you can watch, I believe, to satisfy that particular requirement. I can leave it at that for today. That's sort of the big and little of it. I had provided a memo to the commission through the manager back in late March, but that was sort of after Corona hit and things got crazy. I'm happy to redistribute that if need be. And then, as always, if there are questions individually, you all know how to reach me, and I'm always happy to discuss any of these matters in advance when they come up. So I'll leave it at that, Mayor, unless anyone has any questions.
Anyone? So we're all set. Thank you very much, Counselor, as always, very informative. And I'll just remind everyone, it's the sunshine part is really, really critical. That we really be vigilant. It's we're all friends and we all see each other in different settings. So just remain mindful that we need to really think about what we're talking about and how we're talking about it. So that we are staying within the confines of what is really for the benefit of the entire town, just to make sure we're not having conversations outside of sunshine. Okay, so we will move forward with any agenda additions, deletions, or substitutions at all. Anything need to be changed on the consent agenda, the regular agenda?
There are no additions or deletions that I'm aware of, Mayor.
Okay. I will forego Mayor's comments. We'll go to consent agenda. First, we've got the minutes, the police department, and the interlocal agreement. Everyone's had a chance to review the package. Any comments, any additions? Okay. Okay, I'm hearing someone on their phone. I'm hearing the background conversation. So if you have the capacity to mute, please do. So on the consent agenda, then I'll take a motion for approval of the consent agenda.
So moved, Jack Doyle.
Okay, and a second.
Second, Rick Granaro.
Okay, all in favor, aye.
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 All opposed, like sign. Okay, we will move on to the regular agenda. We've got the bids for the A1A wastewater pump station. Linda, you want to walk us through that?
Certainly. I believe I indicated in my memo to you that we've gone out to bid for the improvements to the wastewater pump station on A1A right outside of the plaza. We've been having a lot of issues with it and it needs to be rehabbed. We received 3 proposals for that. They were from, let's see, Murray Logan for $96,800, Foster Marine for $112,200, and Johnson Davis for 138.4. Mock Ruse reviewed them along with, and they've recommended that an award be given to Mary Logan. For a motion from the commission to approve this proposal.
Okay, so everyone's gotten that information. It looks, I mean, very solid. Certainly trust Mike Rose on this one. Do I have a motion for approval?
Simone Panucci will
Hank
make
Seaman.
the,
Hank Seaman, second.
Okay, so we have a motion from, was that Commissioner Benuti?
Panucci, yes.
Okay, there were two voices, so, okay,
Sorry.
so we have a Commissioner Benuti and Commissioner Seaman, first and second, all in favor, aye.
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 All opposed, like sign. Okay, that is approved. Okay, Ms. Linda, your monthly report.
Yes, several things. I'll start with the code enforcement. We have several issues, even though things are closed down here. We had a noise complaint on Churchill Way that's been dealt with. We have some vibration issue at 1960 South Ocean Boulevard, which has also been dealt with. I have 2 homes that have been on Airbnb in Manalapan, and they were notified by code enforcement that that is allowed. The address is 4020 South Ocean and 1960 South Ocean. We have 63 Curlew has a landscaping issue, and it's been addressed. And Lisa Elder has gotten an NOV for non-complying with the previous warnings about her code. So that's my update on the code enforcement. Next is the draft sign ordinance. I mentioned it before to you, and we do have a draft. It's rather lengthy, and it'll be on the next commission meeting. The Florida legislature has some new requirements to be incorporated into our code, and the attorney has worked on a draft, and you'll get that in the next week or so, and it'll be on the June 23rd meeting for first reading. COVID-19, our favorite thing, which is why we're having this meeting. And I don't know if the next meeting will be via video or we'll be able to attend in person. Part of our problem with in person is we can't maintain the 6-foot distance because there's so many of you. But I will let you know that we have contracted with a company to fabricate plexiglass partitions for the lobby, and those will be permanent. And then I've had some that are being fabricated for the commission chambers that'll be in between each of the seats, so that when we do reconvene the chambers, we will have some protection for all of you for that. The county is gradually opening and going back to normal with a great deal of caution that they're using. Staff today is the first day that staff is back to working their regular schedules as opposed to a split schedule. I'm not going to open the lobby yet to the public until we get the plexiglass installed. I'm not willing to subject my staff to the public just yet. As soon as they're installed, we will have one person in at a time. They'll only be allowed to be in one at a time. They'll be required to wear a mask. And I'm looking at only opening the lobby to the public from 11 till 3, not all day. At this point, I want to see what's going on with it and see how it's spread. It'll probably be till the end of June. So that's pretty much my plan for that. I've been involved in EOC conference calls, which I've let you know in my memos to you. We had our 61st one last week. They were every day, then they went 3 times a week, and that's what we're maintaining right now. I also wrote to you about hazard pay that I've been paying to the employees, and I want to continue that to the end of the month and get an idea of what's going on and what the exposure is at that time. So that's my COVID. Masks everywhere, and I think it's been pretty good. And the restaurants are back open. Very, very little activity, unfortunately. People are just starting to go back. We tested staff for antibodies. All staff went in and had a test for antibodies to see if any of them had been exposed at some point. And so far, everyone has come back negative. So that was another thing that we did. The insurance covered it. So we set it up with MD Now, and they were able to perform those tests to all of the staff. The utility, wells 2 and 3 rehab has been completed, and they are in operation. Testing came back fine. We're getting a better production than we were before they were rehabbed. So I'm really happy with that. The lift station grinder pump as water plant has been installed, and we've now been connected to Boynton Beach, and they're dealing with our sewer. Robert Ory and Tom Biggs and I will continue to work on value for the hypoluxo portion of the water plant's distribution system. I have another meeting scheduled on Thursday. I believe we're going to have some numbers together as far as what we project the value to be. Boynton Beach has been in touch with us, want to come over and look at all of the meters over in hypoluxo, get an idea of how involved it's going to be for them to make the change on September 1st. The audit for last year is underway. It's been a little bit challenging with no public allowed in the building, but we're working, and the auditor is busy working on his stuff. I hope to get the audit test by the end of the month. Pension board met on the 13th. They were having some issues with Fidelity and getting the account set up, and they moved to move their investments into Vanguard since it was a much easier operation for them to work within. Let's see. I expect to have an idea on our assessed value by the beginning of next month. There's a meeting where the property appraiser will meet with all the managers and give us an idea of what our assessed value is going to be. We will have to set our tentative millage rate in July. It's that time again, and set our 2 meetings in September. One thing that I want you to be aware of when we do work on the budget is South Palm Beach. The condominium the new multi-story condominium is on their tax roll this year. So it'll be interesting to see what our fire rescue costs are, because it's usually based on assessed value as opposed to actual costs. And I don't know if this year, if the actual cost of operation will come in less than the actual assessed value for South Palm, because they're expecting a very large jump in their assessed value. And that's what I have for you for today. Any questions?
Nope.
Yeah, no, I don't, any questions at all, folks?
No.
I want to use the opportunity to remind everyone while we've all been home or away or wherever we've been doing all of this, we've had a team at Town Hall, starting with our town manager and our chief and everyone that works there. The town has been continuing to operate as if nothing's going on, and they've been out there right on the very front line, continuing through this process. So, Linda, I applaud you, and I applaud all of the staff for what you've been able to accomplish seamlessly, as if it was just another day in the face of a very, very difficult, unprecedented situation. You've made some very good decisions about separating staff and about making sure that we are 2 steps ahead, looking around the corner on every issue that could possibly happen to the town. So I just want to publicly go on record to thank you, and I urge the commission to do that as well. You guys have done a remarkable job.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. And the staff is really, really, and I can't thank them enough for what they've done too, with the split schedules and continuing to do all that they needed to do. So thank you very much, Mayor.
Yeah, we've got a great team, great team there. Okay, public
Mayor?
comments, do we have any? Yes, sir.
This is Attorney Davis. Before you move on, Matt, if I could just have a moment on the sign code draft, and if I could ask the commission, when you get that, you're going to get a 20-pager that seems like it has an awful lot of change in it, but most of this is meant to bring our code current with changes in the law at the Supreme Court regarding temporary signs. This is not meant to change your permanent signs in terms of signs at the shopping center or any commercial property, or even permanent signs in residential zones. This is meant to address issues with temporary signs, but there's a lot of tweaks to definitions, and there's a lot of restructuring in the ordinance, so it looks like a lot. But I would just ask if you could, to the extent you have concerns or questions in advance of the commission meeting, if there's an opportunity for us to discuss those, either one-on-one or through the town manager. But I think that might help this move forward a lot smoother when you actually have it as an agenda item. So I would just wanted to say that and make that request.
And also it'd be very helpful if you could help us by highlighting the tweaks versus the, what was there, what was not there, any changes. The other thing we have are signs, and I'll remind, this is more of a administrative issue internally, but I'm seeing now and certainly understand, I'm seeing once again a lot of sidewalk signs. I'm also seeing a lot of neon window signs in the plaza. That I may be wrong, but I was under the impression we were not allowing visible neon signs in the windows of restaurants or bars or what have you. But I'm seeing multiple signs like that. I know it's COVID, and I know people are trying to drive people back into these businesses, but we need to be careful about what precedent we set there.
Okay, we'll look into it. I know that the lighted signs are LEDs, not neons. They're at the plaza.
Well, I'm sorry, lighted signs. But maybe that's part of the sign change. I don't know. But I know we were adamant about not having visible signs on the windows of establishments, whatever it may be. And maybe we need to change that language.
Okay, and the signs that are out on the sidewalk, unfortunately, those are in Lantana. The businesses in the plaza know that we don't allow them on our side, and once they put them on Ocean or A1A, it's not in our jurisdiction. We do contact them, and we will contact Lantana and ask them to get in touch with them to have them removed.
Yeah, because it's not a big thing, but it changes the caliber of the plaza when you have, the little TP signs out on the sidewalk saying sale and balloons, and it's a different kind of a look for that plaza.
It is, and we probably have been a little bit more lenient with them just so that people would know that if they can get some business, but we'll get on top of it.
I just don't want to turn this into a permanent thing. We certainly understand in the interim. Okay, so were there public comments at all?
We did not receive any.
We didn't receive any. There's a telephone number of someone that's on. How do we find out who they are and if they have? Hang on a sec, we're looking.
Yeah, let's take a moment and make sure that we're allowing any public comments.
There's two people on. If you can please identify yourself. It's 561-424-1878. Hello. Hello.
Hey, it's Coastal Star.
Oh, it's the Coastal Star. Well, hello, Coastal Star. How are you today?
Hey, how are you?
Is it
I
Dan?
like to be quiet.
Okay, well, that's a good thing. At least we know you're there. And let's see what the other number is. Hang on. 281-3593. Hello. Hello, is 561-281-3593 on the line? Okay, well, Mayor, I don't know who that is. They're not identifying themselves. So
I believe that must be the boat captain for the Coastal Star.
So there are no public comments.
No public comments. All right. Other business. Does anyone have anything? Other business, commissioners? I have one quick thing I just want to put on and have us think about or start thinking about. We've broached this topic once before, maybe twice, but I want to revisit downstream, maybe next meeting or the meeting after we've had a chance to talk about it internally with the staff. I want to revisit the sequence of how the town approves things, specifically as it relates to RCOM. I've got the way we are set up, and I'll go through my explanation, and Counselor and the town manager can comment. But the way we are set up, everything comes through the town for any variance or any code or anything that's required. But everything then goes to ARCOM, and ARCOM's decision is after the fact. It does not have to come back through the town commission in any way, shape, or form. So it's a final version, whatever ARCOM decides. I find that unusual that any commission or subcommittee of the town commission has final say on what happens without having to come back through and get our approval. I understand it's because the presentations that are made are often, if not always, quasi-judicial with ARCOM. So it's a full presentation by everyone making any kind of presentation to the town, and those decisions are made. But I want to revisit moving that backwards so that ARCOM makes decisions and then the final stamp comes through the town after the fact, and not vice versa. And even if that means that's going to have people, they will have to make a presentation twice for some reasons. Unless the town has something, perhaps we can make that part of the consent agenda, go into quasi-judicial, and then just by virtue of consent agenda, approve it if there are no issues. Or if there is an issue, at least it allows the town the opportunity to pull that out and say, we've got an issue with this point or with this particular piece of it. And we're going to need a presentation on that at the town, the same that was made to the ARCOM. So I want to put that on the agenda for future discussion. And Linda, you and Keith, if you want to comment on that, if I've missed something, because we've sort of gone around this several times in the past, but I just have an issue with having any commission that makes a final decision that we can't have a say on as a town commission.
Well, this did come up previously, and it was in reference to the commercial. And as it stands currently, anything that happens at your commercial, in your commercial zoning district goes to the commission, doesn't go to ARCOM. So that's
Right.
one of the changes that were made back a while ago. As far as the residential going to ARCOM and then going to the commission, the way the code is currently set up, that is not how it works. The ARCOM makes the final decision on that. Tcom is just a recommending body. ARCOM is not. So you're looking to change ARCOM from being a decision-making body to a recommending body to the commission?
I'm looking at making them a decision-making body unless there's an issue. The reason it continues to come up for me is we're coming up on summer as a good example. We're going to be relying on 3 people, 4 people, maybe sitting in a room or even on the phone, looking at documents, and they're making decisions that are permanent that we have no say over.
Well, there's an appeal process.
They don't have to come back. So in other words, if those 3 or 4 people decide that a light purple house is fine across the street, across the water, there's no recourse at this point. It doesn't come back to the town. It just shows up. And I've got an issue with that. I think that the town commission should be the final say on anything that goes on in this town. That at least it should come before the town commission as a final stamp to approve it. And I don't think we should have outlier bodies like ARCOM is an outlier, and they're totally autonomous. That we have no say on what they decide or not, other than variances.
Agree.
They can, yeah. So I would like to look at that, and I know it creates an issue for certainly the quasi-judicial part of it, and perhaps an owner may have to come and make 2 presentations. They may have to do it at ARCOM, then they may have to, if there's an issue, they might come and do the entire thing over again for the town. But if there's not any issue, I'm wondering if we can do it where if there is no issue, no commissioner, no one has an issue with the decision made, it can just become part of the consent agenda, even if we have to swear in momentarily, quasi-judicial, to do that consent component. That seems like that makes more sense to me than to have a one-off. So we don't have to discuss it now. I just want to put that out there for everyone to think about, and perhaps we can add that to an agenda item, the next couple of meetings and have a full conversation about
Okay,
it.
so
Okay?
we'll bring this back to you. And what you're looking for is that ARCOM reviews, as they do now. Their decision won't be final. They'll make a recommendation, and then it'll come to the commission, and then the commission will make the final
For
decision.
final approval, correct.
Okay, well,
And we just need to know what all the implications are there. I'm sure there's more than one implication. So, fill in the holes for us.
okay, all right, we'll do that.
Okay?
Keith and I will work on
Okay.
it.
Public hearing, we've got the consideration of ordinance 374. Counselor, if you can walk us through that.
Thank you, Mayor. Ordinance 374, ordinance of the Town Commission of the Town of Manalapan, Florida, amending the Code of Ordinances at Chapter 51, Water, amending Section 51-51 to adopt a process for placing liens on property with unpaid water service charges, providing that each and every other section, subsection, Chapter 51 shall remain in full force and effect as previously adopted, providing a conflicts clause, severability clause, authority to codify an effective date, and for other purposes. This is first reading. Currently, the town's code, in terms of water service, the only remedy that is afforded the town for unpaid water service is that you turn off the water, but it doesn't provide a mechanism to collect unpaid bills that remain outstanding. This ordinance proposes a process that would allow the town to place liens on property for unpaid water charges. It creates a public hearing and a notice and a public hearing process where the property owner would have an opportunity to address the town commission prior to final action, and then it would allow ultimately the town to record a lien for unpaid water service. So that's the purpose and intent of this ordinance.
Okay. And I'm assuming, Linda, there obviously is sufficient issue out there to warrant having this on the books?
Yes, at this point, we are collecting. I have several people that are a couple months behind. And I'll just let you know that we haven't charged any late charges or interest since the onset of the COVID-19. My concern is for the future. If I have issues with people that do not pay their bill, and it gives me another vehicle within which to collect.
How does this translate for residential? I understand. How does it translate to the plaza or to the hotel? Are you able to lien the properties?
Well, the hotel, it doesn't, you lien the property as it is. The plaza, the property owner, I mean, the individual tenants, Keith, you have to help me there. Because I didn't think about that.
Well,
They weren't
I'm not sure it would. I don't know how we meter the plaza. Is it individual meters or
Individual
is it
meters.
master meter?
individual meters.
Okay.
So we need to contemplate what that translates to. So if you have a lease, are we leaning the plaza owner, or are we leaning the leasee? And if so, what are we leaning?
As written, it would be a lien on the land. It would be a lien on the plaza.
Lien on the plaza.
Okay, so it becomes the property owner's responsibility to make sure
Yes.
that tenants are paying the water bill.
Well, I need it to be on the property too, because there are a lot of properties that are residential that are rented. And if the tenant is not going to pay from where
Sure.
the meter is, that's who has to pay for any outstanding balance before we turn service back on.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. I was just trying to get some clarification.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor?
Any other questions? Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
Mr. Mayor, this is Chauncey. I had a question.
Yes, sir.
Okay, the question was, I understood in one case from the press that there was one outfit on the plaza apparently had their meter turned off for lack of payment. I didn't know whether that superseded the fact that the plaza might be responsible for the whole thing. Is that, am I misreading that?
There is a tenant in the plaza who is objecting to their water bill. They don't feel that we should have charged them since the COVID-19 pandemic started. Unfortunately, that particular tenant, their bill has been delinquent since January. So that was before COVID-19 hit the county. It is an issue we'll work with that tenant on. They're refusing to pay their water bill right now.
Okay. So they,
We haven't done anything else with the lien.
so they actually have a separate meter, if I understand that?
Everyone in the plaza has a separate.
Everyone does. Sure.
Okay, that clears that up for me. The second thing is there anything in this particular ordinance that would say that if somebody has a problem personally, a health problem or something like that, it probably won't happen in Manalapan, but if they're indigent or something like that, that we have to keep the water going in order to maintain their health?
We wouldn't turn water off to if it was a health issue. We work with all of our customers. I work on payment plans with both Manalapan residents and the Plaza people and the Hypoluxo people. If there's, for some reason, something has come up and they're unable to pay the whole bill, we'll make payment arrangements with them. So we work with all of our customers to do whatever we can. The threat of turnoff is only after they've been delinquent for almost 3 months.
Okay. Got it.
One of the things I'll jump in, thank you for that, Commissioner. I'll jump in and just remind everyone, because I'm more guilty probably than anyone. You know, I have these questions that I think are just, you know, these genius ideas that no one has thought of. And time after time after time, I'm finding out that Linda and Lisa and staff, you know, have been doing this 2 years ago before I thought about it. They're very, very familiar with not just this particular instance, but every single person in town. It's a very small community. I know for a fact that there's a very generous town in terms of the service that we provide and the way the town goes about providing service to our residents. It's not like any other community on the planet. It's a personalized version of all the above. You know, the cases that we're talking about are unique, but there's no one that I'm aware of that is or has been mistreated in any shape or form. You know, the town does a great job of working with people, especially now. And if there's an issue, it's because it's an issue. You know, it's not because of it's not because the town has just, you know, become very hard in the way they're dealing with people. It's because it's an issue and it's been an issue. So, you know, I've learned that over the years in dealing with sort of the minutia of what comes up on a day-to-day basis. But thanks for those questions. Any other thoughts or any other questions before we vote on the ordinance then? Okay, so I'll take a motion for the ordinance 374 to approve first reading.
Yeah, Hank Seaman, I'd like to make a motion to approve ordinance 374.
Okay, and second.
Simone Benuti will make the second.
Okay, we have a first and a second. All in favor, aye.
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 All opposed, like sign. Okay. All right, Ms. Town Manager, any further business then at all? Is our Town Manager still with us?
Here, I'm sorry. I had to mute it.
Okay. Okay.
No, I have
All
no
right,
other.
folks, thank you all again for, it's an unusual situation, but thanks for your patience and for participating. And with that, we will bring this meeting to an adjournment.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes,
Mr. Mayor,
sir.
this is Chauncey Johnstone. I
Yes,
just
sir.
had some questions as I was on the board before, and I'm just getting back on it. First of all, with regards to this system we're using right now, I am familiar with it because I've used it in a couple of boards I'm on in other parts of the country. Is this something that eventually will get into a visual thing?
Right now, I think that's under conversation. I mean, I think that's already happening. I believe that the issues that I've seen so far are issues of the public's ability to participate. And the reason that we're on audio is everyone who wants to can participate, whether you even have a phone or a computer or not. And I think, and maybe I'm wrong, but based on what I've seen, I think the thinking from the governor's office was it has to be something that anyone has access to. And so this was the best way to have anyone have access to it. I do the same thing. I do Zoom with all of my company. We're in whatever 22 states right now with various clients, and I'm doing it all from 1690 Lands End. So, Zoom is a great tool, but we'll leave that in the hands of town manager and council, and whatever the governor says we can do, we'll certainly do.
And just so I can make a comment on that, if we have the ability to have this type of meeting for our next meeting, it's something we'll consider with the video. If the governor doesn't change his executive order, we will have to go back to having meetings in person, and you will not be able to have the quorum established by this type of a medium. So we won't know that for a while, but if we have our June meeting via telecommunication like this, we will either offer it in video or audio. For this one, we just did audio, felt it was the easiest way for us to handle the first meeting. So we'll keep you posted on that. Okay?
Yeah,
Linda, this is Keith.
Keith,
Go ahead, Keith.
Just a real quick question. Are we doing ARCOM in person, or are we doing ARCOM like this?
We're doing ARCOM in person because I can separate the commissioners far enough apart so that there's social distancing. We're only allowing one of the presenter, one of each agenda. That person or that group of people will be allowed one in, and they'll make the presentation. They'll leave, and we'll control the audience that way. So only the people presenting will be in, and then they'll leave. So we've been able to use the social distancing and have.
Very good. Thank you.
All right, folks, thanks so much.
Linda?
Yes.
Yeah, it's Chauncey Johnstone. A question on this point on the ARCOM, anything similar. Is there a way that if we are going to do this through the Zoom or whatever, that we can get some sort of a picture or something mailed or whatever of what exactly is being done with a particular property, if that's necessary, before?
We're not doing ARCOM by Zoom. We're doing ARCOM as a regular meeting being held in the chambers.
Okay, but if the commission has to, as the mayor said, if we happen to go into something where the final decision comes out of the town commission, would there be some way that the town commission, if you're not there, the town commissioner would be able to see a visual of whatever's being talked about?
Well, Lisa posts everything on the website for all the meetings. As far as ARCOM, we'd have to work on that and see how we could handle that, because the plans are too large for for you to be able to see visually on the computer, I don't believe. So.
And this is Keith Davis. And we're going to have to talk through that, because that implicates ex parte issues if the commission is going to be deciding these as well. So this is going to require some discussion and logistical figuring out. It's not as simple as just watching it. If commissioners are going to be decision makers, and you're observing ARCOM, that pulls ex parte into play. So it's going to require, as the mayor said earlier, some discussion and figuring out what the implications are.
Okay.
But ahead of ourselves with that part.
Okay, sorry.
All right, Linda, Keith, everyone, thanks so much. Have a great day.
Thanks again. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.